Welcome to All Ask the Questions Around Here, the podcast where we explore life's unexpected intersections. I'm your host, Dr. Joseph Elisha. Today, like always, we'll journey from the challenging conversations to the inspiring and lighthearted discussions that connect us all. Let's begin. Welcome to another episode of All Ask the Questions Around Here. And I wanted to thank my dear friend, Mrs. Alex Young, in joining us today. Alex and I go back a long ways here in the Coachella Valley. She has been a great friend. We have worked together a significant amount. I have tortured her quite a few times in the operating room, and we've had a great time actually together in the Valley. And I wanted to take this time to thank you, Alex, for joining me on actually such a short notice as well.
Oh, no problem. Luckily I work from home nowadays, so it's a little easier on my schedule. So I appreciate you having me. That's, the first thing.
Thank you.
Like, who wants to talk? My kids are tired of hearing me talk, so it's good that I get to talk to an adult.
That's wonderful. Well, the pleasure is all mine. And I know most of my listeners think that I'm a rock star, but Alex actually can take some credit and just let us, tell us a little bit about who you are, Alex, and your upbringing. I think you have a very unique upbringing, and that
I do.
I would love to know. I think our audience would be fascinated by your story.
I don't find it fascinating. My kids don't find it fascinating, but when I talk to, it's really weird dynamics. You could, first of all, where we live in the desert, Coachella Valley, we've got Coachella going on right now. I just drove to Palm Springs and saw everyone out in an area where I was born at. And everyone's out on the streets for Coachella right now. And it's just this great vibe and ritzy looking places, right? And then you get to the gas station at the end of Snow Creek, right? Which is not like the most place you want to hang out, right? And I walk in there and the girl tells me, that guy out there has been picking up my cigarette butts. What should I do? And smoking them and sticking them in his ears. And he just rose out of the desert. And I'm like, this is like a movie scene. Like, I'm in a movie. Is somebody watching this right now? Because if I had a camera on me, just that little bit of my life, in time. But no, my father is Eric Burdon of the Animals. And again, a lot of people will be like, wow, that's cool. Or they'll be like, I have no idea who you're talking about. So I think he was missed a lot as one of the front runners for the British invasion. And he's from English descent. My mom's German. She came over on a ship, when she was like 9 years old, because my grandmother married an American soldier and she didn't know any better, to come to America. She'd be rolling over in her grave right now. But it was an interesting childhood, to say the least, because I had the best of, or the worst of one world and then the best of another world, which was not really what it's all cracked up to be, which is the music business. And people have a misconception of like, oh God, that's so great that that's who your dad is. But unfortunately, there's like a time warp there where, someone's got to go to work for 9 to 12 months. I think he did like 370 shows one year in his 70s. So time with him has been a great big missing piece of my life. I watch all the videos of him that I can't thank God for YouTube, because my kids will always have an access to what he did for music, right? But when I was younger, I didn't have that access. So he'd go on a radio show and I'd like bomb the radio show. Like, I'm his daughter, like just act like I'm a regular person. And I'd be like 12 years old or whatever. And he'd be like, quit calling me at the office, but it was my way to like get into his life, like to not be forgotten. And I think that there's a lot of rock star children out there that I haven't even tapped into. That might be a future endeavor of mine, of writing a book on, like what rock star children have missed through their life by having their parent or significant other on the road. So it does take a toll, and it's hard work. It's not all glitz and glamour, doctor. Like, that's Dr. Joseph. Dr. Joseph. Me go together. But yeah, it's an interesting, especially in the 80s, that was an interesting time for me when I was just young.
Of course. Now, Alex, I don't in any way want to minimize your personal life and obviously what you've achieved as a mother, as a wife. Tell us a little bit about your life and what you've, your children, what you've been up to. I know your husband, Patrick, and I know he's in the construction business, but give us a picture of who you are.
I never really had a chance until now to kind of figure out, well, I always knew that I was a singer down in my soul. And when I was a child, it was like, you're either going to be an actress or you're going to be a singer, and that's all you're going to be. And there isn't any talk about retirement, or there isn't any talk about, beyond that point. But I had children very young. My first child I had at 16. And I didn't get a chance to raise her, which was quite an eye opener for me, losing that part of what I thought was my identity. And then I looked at my mom that never really had a career and never had backup income. And I thought, I need to get something to where I have sustainable income, because music business is not everybody's going to make it. There's so many talented, unrecognized people out there that don't even, have a chance, even with the name, to make it, right? So I went into dentistry really young. At like 16, I took a side course to become a dental assistant. And I knew that would be sustainable income, and I'd be part of the in community, which was the doctors, because I never was as smart as them. I didn't apply it right. Okay, I'll say that. So I met Patrick really young, like at 17. We've been together all this time. We have 4 beautiful children. They're all becoming adults, and they don't need me very much anymore, which is kind of hard. But so I decided in my spare time while I work for the business, because my mom did, as you know, she passed away last year, and that kind of freed up a lot of my time, unfortunately.
And that process, I talked to you a fair amount during that time, and I know quite a tough journey for you.
Yeah, we thought she was going to live, and she was cancer-free for 2 weeks. I had her eye surgery all lined up to be fixed because she was already blind by that point.
Yes.
And she was cleared for 2 weeks, and then she got influenza and then COVID, and it just spiraled down from there. And I was like left empty-handed, and I stayed with her till the end. But which was hard. That was my real first death in my life, right? And it forced me to kind of look within myself and don't let anything be unsaid or undone, right? And I can remember dating my husband when I was like 17. He'd find these like notebooks of like songs, essentially, but he would be like, "What is this? Who are you writing to? Do you have another guy? What's going on here?" I'm like, "No, it's music. It's just," and so the problem is I never had a tool to generate the melodies that were in my head. So I decided to hook up with this young, very talented guitar teacher out here, and I spend an hour with him on every Thursday. And last Thursday, we almost completed a complete song. And he's like, "Look at you, you're playing 3 chords in a row." And I'm like thinking, to any guitar person, that is nothing. But to me, that is an accomplishment.
You realize I'm going to ask you to
play those 3 chords. Yeah. But so I came up, I constantly am coming up with songs just based off of a couple chords. Like I when the fires happened in LA, I picked up the guitar and I didn't even know 2 chords. And because my vocal range, I mean, I'm not like, I don't know. I don't want to say like Celine Dion or anything like that, but that of that caliber, but I have the blues in me and it's just born and bred in me.
And you have
So
the range.
yeah, I have the vocal. My dad used to tell me I never need to use violence. I could just yell and someone will run away, because he's got such projection, right? And I think that that's just ingrained in me and something that I've wanted to do. And I'm 50 and I don't know where it's going to go, but I have to do it because it's just in me. If it ends up here at the local bars in Yucca Valley, it doesn't matter who's listening.
Of course. Of
So
course.
I sang a couple weeks ago to a room of like 10 people, which was more frightening than, like hundreds of people. Now, I will say on that note, what kind of cultivated all of this was I went to a war concert, which I don't know if you know, my dad was with the band War, kind of, was the name of the band, right? I don't want to say that it got them going because they've done so much without them. And now you can't hear a pharmaceutical commercial without "Why Can't We Be Friends" or, Lowrider or any of those great hits that War has done. But there was a time about 15 years ago that they were just playing the smallest venue at Fantasy Springs. And I bought tickets and I hadn't seen them since I was a kid. And it was Lonnie Jordan, and he's the original one of the founding members. And my husband and I are in line with everyone else, just like normal people, bought my tickets, and all these people are standing around with my dad's albums in their arms, and they're like wanting to get them signed. And my husband and I were just like blown away, like this little venue, all this music's going to come out of this little hole in the wall at Fantasy Springs. They have the lounge there, where it's downstairs. And I wait all this time, and I was in the front row, and I waited for the right moment to like whisper in the saxophonist's ear, like, "Hey, tell Lonnie that I'm here." And my husband just went to go get a beer, and he comes back. And by the time he gets back, I'm on stage.
You're on this stage.
The line in front of, and that has continued. The last
That is so cool.
time I sang for them was in Morongo, and I think it was about a year ago. I think it came up on my memories. But it's funny because I won't even talk to them before, and I'll just be sitting in the audience with no expectations because I've already done that before and it hasn't happened. So I'm in this Morongo casino, which holds a lot more people, right? It's not just that little, or the Tamale Festival, which I've sang or whatever.
Of course.
And I'm in the audience just sitting down, and they're like, "Oh, we think someone special's in the audience." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, here we go. Bye." And the doors fling open after I'm done, and he calls me back, Lonnie, and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, why aren't you doing this? This is a passion." And I'm like, "Because I need help." And he's like, "You don't need any help at all. You just need to do it." And I'm like, "Okay." So I got that in my head, and I just decided it was time to pick up what I think is the easiest tool for me to convey what I want to convey to the guitar player, because then he can fluff it up and make it into a song.
What a great story.
Yeah.
I love that story because, I mean, it just, I'm just trying to think how you were able to summon up the courage to walk on stage and just...
I have no problem at all.
I guess I'm looking at it from my own perspective because...
What was weirder is pulling on your scrubs the next morning and going to work like nothing's ever happened, right? And
right.
There could be, I'll be working on somebody and they'll be like, "Oh, I was at the war show last night," or, whatever. Or when I was working at the surgery center in Palm Springs, the uniform delivery guy was at the Morongo show like years ago. This is about 10 years ago because I sang there before. And he goes, "You were on the stage last night at Morongo." And I'm like, "Yeah, today I'm scrubbing in and taking orders from a doctor." So it's such a weird dynamic. So there's been multiple occasions like that, but not where I was the, singer, but just to experience like when my dad got inducted into the Rock Walk right, in Los Angeles. And that was like a whole 3-day event. And we were completely exhausted. And we looked at my husband and I looked at each other and we were like, how can he do this at 60 something years old? Now he's, in his 80s, but just, we were exhausted and we were way younger. We're like 35 years younger. We couldn't do it. But that was a cool time.
I know that every time I look at someone like Mick Jagger and, the Rolling Stones, and they've been at it for over 5 decades. And I just think to myself, considering all that they've done, all the drugs and drinks and all of that, there was the probability of this band having stayed together was probably less than 0.01% over the years. And they've stayed together. They still produce great music. And it must be just that, I don't know what it is. They have the specialness about them that when they're on stage, they lose track of their age, their energy, and how old they are, and everything else kind of disappears.
As you know, I'm sure you feel the same way about your own, life. Like I don't know that you look in the mirror and feel how old you are. I don't. I look in the mirror and I see who I am now, but my brain is still like back then,
Of course.
I was young once, and I know, you just take bits and pieces of your life and try to, hold on to what is good and throw out the bad.
Exactly. And as I'm sure you can attest to this, what keeps me young is things that ground me: family, faith, friends, and things that I look forward to, my passions. And obviously, if you were to ask me about a year ago, or if you were to tell me about a year ago that I'd be launching a podcast, I would laugh at you. And because I've always thought of myself as an introvert and somebody who is perfectly comfortable just being at home, sitting in my office, reading a book, and not, being out there and talking to people. But the challenge that I was facing was I have always wanted to write. And at various times in my life, I've written poetry, but every time I sat down to write something, I would hit a block wall. And then I thought, you know what, why don't I just talk?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very proud of you for taking that initiative and doing it. I think you're probably one of the first doctors that are putting himself out there like that. I think it's amazing. I think that what you've given to the community and your life, I watched your, I know this isn't supposed to be about you. You're the one who's supposed to ask questions, but I'm going to turn it around a little bit for just a second.
Are you sure you want to go there?
I saw your video of you at El Mirador and what you had to say about the facility and the people that you work with. And that's what keeps you there, is the people that you work with. And they do become family. That's regardless of the situation, you do become family with the people you work with,
Of course, you just like kids being at school, your kids spend so much time with their teachers. In fact, at times they spend more time with their teachers than they do with you at home.
Right.
But of course, I'm going to turn the focus back on you here. And because as you know, I'll ask the questions around here.
Go ahead. I like it.
We all have our own concepts and constructs in our mind about what it's like to be a celebrity, a rock star, an influencer, someone who has put themselves out there. And as you very accurately pointed out, the flip side of the coin, which is the family of that person, is paying a price. And sometimes that price is quite high. And I want to delve into that a little bit with you. But I want to start with actually a positive memory. What's a positive memory of your dad that sticks out in your mind, a place in your mind that you go to that makes you feel good about your father?
it's kind of funny that you talk about you being an introvert and then you step into your role and you're who you are at work. And that's kind of how he is. He's just a poet. He's got books and books of, memoirs that he's written or his thoughts for the day or whatever. And he used to take, I mean, the weirdest thing, there wasn't any Disneyland or, you know, let's go to the local park. It was more like, let's go to a foreign film or let's see the latest movie that may not be appropriate for a young child. But he just took me anyway, right? Because what is he going to do with me? Can't leave me at home. But I remember as a child when things were a lot simpler and I would go to England every like Christmas and summer with him to see my grandparents and cousins and we had a lot of good times those Christmases that my grandma was still alive and so I take those and because there was a lot of summers. And then in 83, I went on tour with him and the Animals when they reunited. And I got a taste of actually, because to me, he was just dad. Like it wasn't, I was paying homage to the Doors and to Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix. And I had no idea how intertwined, like Jimi Hendrix, for instance, and my father's life
They were friends.
They were friends. He was there, played with him the night before he died or night that he died, was the first one at the scene of his death. All of this was unbeknownst to me as I'm jamming Jimi Hendrix and as my friend so pointedly put it at my 50th birthday party that I would bring her into a room and say like, okay, we're going to play this album over and over again until we know every single word, and she'd be like, Alex, again, we got to sit and listen to this, and it's just, music was just in me. And I didn't even know that what contributions he had made to music and blues and bringing.
It didn't matter. He was dad.
Yeah, he was dad.
In some ways.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't matter. But that tour opened my eyes to so much. Like I would see people crying in the audience and the music to me was atrocious at the time. I didn't understand how people could listen to that because, when you're a kid, you've got your own idols, right? And I'd be like, what's going on? Like people are crying in the audience, but there's certain songs that, through Vietnam that carried people home, and will always be like, Sky Pilot or Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. There's a lot of music that he took from other Black artists and made it presentable to the white generation of people that were coming up in America that didn't even tap into their own music. It was here already. But those English musicians took the old Black blues and turned it into their own little thing. And now it was presentable to the United States, which it was always here. We just didn't acknowledge it. And I thank him for that part of it. And I do have a lot of fond memories, but they were quiet times. He was a very quiet, introvert man until he was around people. And then he was just, always
different persona.
I have a story that my son works at this dealership and the manager was friends with my dad for like 30 years, but he hasn't seen him in a long time, but he goes, I have a story about your dad. And I'm like, oh gosh, I should probably go around and do that. Like ask people stories like what. And he said, we went out drinking one night and the Blue Guitar in downtown Palm Springs is there and you could get up and you could jam with the band. So he got up and jammed with the band, but he was so drunk that he knocked the drums over and he hit his head, but he got up and finished the jam and then got home somehow. And this guy tells me, he calls me the next morning and he goes, this is before we had tracers on our car and key fobs that could our phone would locate our car. He said, I have no idea where my car is. It's in Palm Springs somewhere. I got a taxi home. I couldn't find it. So they went out the whole next day searching for that car. And I thought, that's just crazy.
That's a funny story.
He answered the door with some ice on his head. Can you help me find my car?
How much of a factor was he in Jimi Hendrix's rise to his level of success?
I don't want to speak on that too much, but I do know, Jimi Hendrix had a short career. And when he came to England, he had to go to Newcastle because the bass player for the Animals was his manager. That if you watch any of the movies, and it's Chaz Chandler is depicted as the manager of, and he's the one who got him to sing, because at the beginning he didn't want to sing. I just watched this documentary recently about it, and there's Chaz, who's the bass player for the Animals. So the keyboardist of the Animals couldn't fly. So that wasn't going to work on a world tour. So they didn't stay together very long. And I think that he was just engulfing all of the music of London or Newcastle or wherever he went, because there were so many of them at that time in that area that he could just make his way or try to find his way. Unfortunately, it was a short path that he traveled, but he made such an influence on so many musicians. And my father mourned, there's a story that, I don't know how true it is, but there's a story that, my mom, he was dating other people when he met my mom, but Jimi Hendrix had a song called Desert Rose, and my mom's name is Rose. And it was like just a year and a half after Jimi had died. Actually, it was right when Jimi died, because I think it was 1972 when Jimi Hendrix died. I was born in 1974. So my dad was still recovering from that whole traumatic experience. We met my mom, and he had other girlfriends, but this rose just got dropped off at his front door, basically. That's how he looked at it, I'm sure. And he's like, wait a second, this is meant to be. All the signs are, that I need to pursue this a little bit further. And it ended up being like a 9-year marriage or so, 9 years. So, and here was home base for him, Palm Springs, until it got a little bit too busy for him. And then he came up to the high desert, but he's always been here.
He does not live up there still, does he? Or?
He has a residence there, but it's not being used. So
got it.
He's in Ojai, California. Yeah. And his wife is a savvy businesswoman. So I'm sure, he's well taken care of. I check on him every once in a while, and, everybody wants to live their own life when they get older. So let him live his life. He's been working all these years, singing. I can't tell you how many times he's probably sang House of the Rising Sun. I mean, you got to get sick of it at some point, right?
It's in his blood.
I know. He made that way. So, that song was recorded in one take. Now they get you in the studio.
No kidding.
One take. And they use that take and they ran with it. They said, that's it. We don't want to hear it again.
And that is a rarity in the music industry, right?
You don't hear that.
There's so many tweaks and...
Yeah. One take. And it was on Billboard, like music for like 100 weeks, top charts, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bob Dylan did it first, and it didn't have the same resonation with the public as it did.
Right. Now he also had a relationship with the Beatles.
Yeah. He's really close with Ringo still. I don't know. It's kind of like, I think it's the battle of the frontmen. I think that they kind of still, there's multiple pictures online of my dad and McCartney and Mick. And there's actually a video of them asking Mick when he's like 19 years old, what do you think of the Animals, And so I'm sure there was always that like grudge match when they were younger. And now I'm sure it's just fallen to the wayside because they're just happy to be alive still, right?
Going back to his relationship with the Beatles, there is this story about him.
I know where you're going.
I think you know what I'm going to talk about. Is it okay to talk about it?
Yeah. It's you can look it up and the internet, I guess, right? I mean, it's not
So,
something a dog. I know what you're. Go ahead and ask it. And then we'll
well,
go
it's
ahead.
so there's this Beatles song, I Am the Walrus, I Am the Eggman.
Yes,
And it's thought that your dad was
the Eggman.
the
Yeah.
Eggman.
Yeah. And
And
I would constantly ask him as a child, what did that mean? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to find out on your own. So
right. And
I
did
did.
you find out?
Yeah, I did my research, and it's explicit. So plug your ears if you're under 18. But I guess he was with this, I think she's Jamaican or somebody from the Caribbean or something. And she cracked eggs on his naked body and then ate him off of him. Yeah, that's so, when it's your dad, I'm like,
So kind of scrambled in a way.
shaken, not stirred. Right. Yeah. So that's, if it's going to be anybody, it's better to be your dad than your mother. Right. I guess.
Did you ever, at any point in your life, wish that he wasn't a rock star and he was just this regular guy who went to work and came back home?
All the time. But I don't think he would have been happy. And he started so young in those clubs, they would sneak him in. And I think he was a trumpet player to begin with, but that didn't work out. And then they had the same guys that were in the Animals. They were like 15, 16 playing at these clubs. Because America's so different than England. I just went after my mom passed, and I
well, they talk funny, but
no, we talk funny. Well, people from Newcastle especially talk funny. Newcastle is like to England what Texas is to us, right? So they have that. They're really far north. But I just went there and went to the Discovery Museum, and I walk in and there's a room like bigger than my living room and my kitchen that's all dedicated to him, because there wasn't very many. I know there is a shirt that has the names of all the people. I don't know a lot of them, but Sting is one that came from his hometown, and Sting's dad was our family's milkman, back in the day. I mean, so it was just, and it's such
what a small world.
It's such a small town that even now today, I went and followed the path that my mom went when she was there visiting my grandparents, and to the old house that my grandparents owned, which is now an Airbnb. And every store I went into, they would have like Eric Burdon and the Animal pillows, or like magnets or whatever. And it was really, really cool to be in his hometown, because they do really respect and love him.
Cherish him.
Yeah, they do. And if you're from Newcastle and you don't know who he is, you're very uneducated, because it's everywhere. I mean, you can't avoid it. So, yeah.
Interesting.
You can't avoid it anyway. I was just talking to my son about this the other day. He's in bartending school, and they shuffle music just randomly. And he's talking about, I think he was talking about his grandfather, which, he doesn't really have a relationship with my older children, because as he got older, it was harder for him to communicate with them. And he was living in Greece also for many, many years. So the relationship he has with my older children is totally different than he has with my younger children. But my son was explaining to one of the guys there, yeah, that's actually my grandfather. And just as he's saying it, he can hear it in the background on the, whatever the guy was playing, music. And he was like, it's such a trip. I'm like, think how I feel. I get to the grocery store, wherever. I mean, and he comes on the radio, and I'm thinking, what a trip.
Mm-hmm. That is.
It is. It is, because, I've basically lived a normal life, sheltered from all that, besides my childhood, But my older years, I just have kept to a normal life, trying to stay out of the spotlight, and concentrated on raising my children. Because the hardest part for me, having a rock star father, was looking up at that graduation time or prom time or
The
marriage
special
time,
events.
and you have a contract with someone to be somewhere, you cannot break it. And it's very disheartening on the child. So I knew from, even though I could do it, I didn't want to until my kids were older. And at whatever cost that is to me, it doesn't matter because I'm grounded with my family, and, I have grandkids now, and, it's important that I'm available for them when they need me. Or was, because I was soccer mom and coached my children and, did all that stuff. So I tried to overcompensate a little bit too much sometimes, but it was worth it.
I can relate to that because when I was working in a hospital-based practice, and any time that I had a call obligation, if that conflicted with some after-school thing, a practice or a game or anything, I never hesitated to give up that call or that one extra procedure or anything like that. It just didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was that if my child is looking up during a game, that they see me there. And I really loved that I did that, because at the end of the day, it just, I guess our kids don't really care about how much money we make, what kind of a house we live in, or any of that. What they care is that they feel like they mattered.
Right. And, my mom struggled with addiction most of her life. And she for me and I for her was the only stable, even though it was hard to see her in those situations as an addict. Then it spilled over into me in my younger years. But in the end, she got her act together, probably a little too late, but I'm happy that she did. But she was always there, and she'd give the last dollar she had to me if I needed it. She was not a selfish person at all. And I was in a support group, and addiction support group, actually, and they were talking about loss, and it was right when it happened, so I was really crying through the whole thing. But I explained my mother to them, and they said, wow, you really, with all that she put you through, really, all the dysfunction, all the, I tend to collect a lot of stuff. My husband, it drives him nuts, but it's because I was evicted so many times when I was a child that, like, I would lose everything. First off, we were in a house fire when I was a kid in Palm Springs. We had a house in downtown Palm Springs, right off Palo Verde, between Mesquite. I don't know if you've been in that area, but that was the house that my mom had when my mother and father divorced. And in the middle of the night, it caught on fire from a urethane foam leak in the roof. And there's been stories my mom burned the house down. Those are not true. Just get that for the record. She didn't do it. It makes for a good story, though. I mean, yeah, the jilted wife burns down.
Definitely a lot sexier than the house just burned down.
Nothing says, like, what is it? Who comes and helps you when your house burns down or whatever, or when there's a disaster? Red Cross. That's what I was thinking of.
Red Cross.
Yeah. So there's nothing says like happiness, like having the Red Cross give you clothes to wear for the next 2 days. It was a really traumatic experience in my life. I could smell fire really easily now, but we barely got out alive and lost everything. I don't have very many pictures of myself. Luckily, I have an uncle that lives in Lancaster, and he was estranged from my mom, but when she passed, I reached out to him, and he's like, I've got a lot of pictures. You can come take pictures of them, and so you can have them. But yeah. So that's why I like have this little thing about not letting go of something, even though it's like meaningless, like when we cleaned out my mom's house, she didn't have anything, no jewelry, no assets. No, it was super simple. But to throw out her folded towels or sheets, is just like, ugh, to me, because I just want to hold on to everything so I don't lose it. Weird.
Of course.
Weird
Yes.
disorder.
Well, I wouldn't call it disorder. It's just, we grieve because we become attached to people. And it's just a measure of grief is just a measure of love.
Yeah, it's been hard. It's only been a year. Oh, well, it's coming up on a year.
Yeah, I remember. As I said, we chatted quite a bit during that time, and now I would imagine that if I was the child of a very high profile individual like your dad, who has achieved so much, and for God's sake, Rolling Stones magazine called him one of the top
100.
It was like number 54. He's in the top 100 greatest singers of all time.
Yeah. Amazing.
Growing up in the shadow of a person like this, I would imagine that I would be facing an insurmountable mountain in terms of letting the people know that, hey, I'm here too. And I matter. Look at what I have achieved. And did you ever get into that kind of a mindset where you always felt like you had to prove yourself or go above and beyond? And how did that impact you?
The funny thing is today we're living in a whole different era, right? And so the older I get, the more I find out. And if you look at it with today's eyes, it would be totally unacceptable. But back in the day, the things that him or my mother had done, that was what everyone was doing. And so I've had to grapple with that quite a bit, like as far as morals and what's right and what's wrong, because in today's world, what is right and what's wrong is totally different. Like the whole Me Too movement, all that stuff has put a wrinkle in my memories of both my mom and my father. But it never really affected me like I have to do better, do more, be an overachiever. It was hard, really hard growing up because it was the Nancy Reagan just say no to drug era, right? And I'm on tour with my dad in 86, which I would have been, I was born in 74. Oh no, 83, I was on tour with them. So I was 9. And we get to Menorca, Spain, where he had a home, and they're like, get up to the bar, whatever you want, and it was just like normal, and I'm like now I look at it like, what's going on?
How in the world was that normal?
And then I got on a scooter and rode all around the island, crashed it a couple times. I don't know. Now, my dad never used amphetamines because he has asthma. And I think when you were talking earlier about rock stars surviving and becoming still around, right? I think a lot of that has to do with their choice of drug. I think because my dad has stayed away from like opioids and amphetamines, I think it's given him a little bit more longevity in life, those choices. But he, like I said, he has asthma really bad. So those things, and he couldn't smoke cigarettes, those type of things. It was kind of hard. And sometimes, because there was times I'd be homeless with my mom and be wondering, where's he at? Where's the other half of this mess? Right. But again, you can use the contract excuse or you can use whatever excuse, but I have to forgive him for that. I can't carry that weight on my shoulders. So I never wanted to be like him. I wanted to be a part of him, which I will always be. But I never had the pressure to like overachieve or be embarrassed about the way I sing or what I do or whatever, because a lot of teachers treated me poorly because they knew who he was. And it wasn't cool to be Eric Burdon's daughter in 1983 because Nancy Reagan was telling everybody to ditch the drugs. And he's all about like LSD and, mescaline and, all that fun stuff that they partaked in back then, open the refrigerator, there's some mushrooms, and just shut the refrigerator. Oh, I don't want to see that, type thing. I know it seems crazy to you, and it's just normal everyday, stuff. That's why these rock stars get in trouble, because they can get whatever they want.
Of course, mushrooms are now finding, some room in
microdosing, right?
Yeah, and microdosing and treating depression and all sorts of other medical conditions. But Alex, I never knew that you went through periods of homelessness.
Oh yeah, with my mom, because she was an addict and she had no career. So that really pushed me at 16 to go and do this dental program. I wanted the medical assistant program, but it was full. So I said, well, I'll just do this because I know it's going to be a steady course of income. And if I don't have a man in my life to take care of me, I've got something to fall back on. And I've cultivated that into much more. I've broadened my horizons. I mean, I could work in a dental office, surgery office, whatever, and be successful. And that's what made me proud, not to have to call, because when I was younger, I did have to call on my dad for a lot of stuff. But as I matured and, Patrick and I got more together with our business and other things we were doing, I had to call on him less and less, which was really nice because it's not very fun to call your parents for money when you're an adult, right?
Of course.
Right. So
yes.
I didn't want that, although it had happened a couple times, but not very often. I'm not riding on his coattails.
What was your relationship with your dad right now?
It's estranged, I would say. He's getting older. I think his wife's protecting him from outer sources. I can't get too into it because I don't know enough. Like, I saw him in August. We had brunch after he performed at a I would say it was like an LA lowrider. He was the only white man on the entire weekend lineup, but it was like Coachella for lowrider. I mean, they had so many people there. Chaka Khan, they had War, they had a whole bunch of people. I can't even remember. It was so many people. And I saw him perform, and, he's getting on in years. And I think, it's time to probably take a break. You can't be doing it forever, although he probably wants to. But I can pick up the phone and call him and say hello, but it's not like I would like it to be.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And
that must hurt. That must hurt.
Yeah, it hurts a lot. But I've already done the crying for that years ago, so I'm a lot more comfortable with talking about it. But after his mother passed and he estranged himself from his own family in England, I think it was just easier for him it's kind of like when you give a kid up for adoption, it really hurts for a long, long time. And I don't know if he even went through that, but I know I did. Longing for his love, like just wanting to be appreciated, I will say, I called him about a month ago and I told him that I was picking up the guitar and music was just flowing out of me. And he did say, I'm proud of you. And I was like, wow, I don't even know what to say about that. And then,
had you ever heard that from him
No,
before?
I have not. No, that was a first. And so I didn't even know how to react. I was like, is this a joke? Like, are you going to remember this next week? Or I don't know.
Where's the punchline?
Yeah. And then when I did sit with him, because as you know, my mother passed away on his birthday.
Yes.
And that was the shock for me. I mean, I was there with her. I knew she was going to pass. I didn't even know the date. I'd been going through so much with ICU and then hospice. And I just felt like it was her I think she never stopped loving him, and I think it was divine intervention. I really do. I, I'm not really, really religious because I wasn't brought up in that type of environment, but somebody intervened there that day, you know, when it's 1:15 a.m., an hour and 15 minutes into his birthday, and my mom passes away. And I just looked at her and said, "You got him," But it's hard on me too, because now every
A
time I
final
celebrate,
reminder.
right, every time I celebrate, or think about calling him on his birthday, which is coming up soon, I'm gonna be reminded of the day that she passed away. So that's gonna have to be a song for sure.
Of course, after the song, you're going to write about the great Dr. Elisha, right?
You are my first podcast, so yeah, you'll probably get in the book for sure.
The question that I had is, the scenario you're describing with your mom and your father was basically she was abandoned, with the addiction you guys are going through, evictions, and he's off somewhere else on tour. And yet you feel like that she continued to love him.
Oh,
and
completely.
How do you figure that?
I take it. I think I might have mentioned this to you, but I was watching Playboy the other day, and there was a young girl who came from Canada, and she reminded me of my mother so much because my mother was an absolute bombshell when she was young. And I didn't get those side of the genes, by the way. But I got my dad's big hands. I mean, you probably hold a basketball with these hands. Now that I watch, do you watch?
You're being unkind to yourself.
There's this funny show on TV now on Max, and the lady keeps making reference to her assistant's hands. She's a star on Vegas Strip, and she's got a lady. But anyway, I think that she was really naive and really beautiful, and he wasn't the first person. She has a story of Elvis pulling. She worked at Thrifty's, by the way, in downtown Hollywood.
Okay.
She actually was a survivor of abuse of some sort. I'm not clear. Well, she's explained to me, but I'd rather not say it here. But she, back in those days, they did not take the child side at all. If you complained about any abuse, you were sent straight to juvenile hall. So she was in there with so many stars, children, and because it was in Hollywood and McLaren Hall, actually. And then she graduated to the Hamburger House, which is a stay home work release into the society program. And she tells me stories about hitchhiking and this guy taking her up to the Hollywood Hills and not going to let her go. And she's like begging him, I got to be in by 10 or I'm going to lose my place to live. And so she got a job at Thrifty's, and she was no stranger to musicians because you're there, right? You're in the Mecca at that time, right? The Roxy, the Rainbow, and Gazzari's was another place that she used to dance at, right? And she dated the saxophonist for Chicago for a while. And then my dad walks into Thrifty's to buy some batteries and asks her on a date, and the rest was history. She came to the United States when she was 9 years old. So she had to learn a whole new language, although she went to an American school. I don't know where you came from, if that's how it was, but they made them learn English rather than German.
That was the same
right? It was really,
in Iran as well.
Really important. So she came over at like 10 years old on the USS America. So it was a ship from Germany because it's probably the cheapest way, right? And she had filed, or there were some complaints of abuse. So she ended up in juvenile hall and had to work her way out of that. And then all of a sudden, here comes my dad and, fur coats and, photograph. Although she did do some she would tell me she had to go to etiquette school. That was like a must for every young lady, how to cross your legs, how how to carry your books, and you put your books on the top of your head and you walk across the room, right? And so she wasn't too worldly as far as it went at that stage in her life, but I guess they had a whirlwind romance and got married in Vegas like a year and a half later, And then I came in 74. But I mean, I do resent addiction, but I still loved her throughout the whole thing because I could never leave her. Who was she going to go to? Her mom passed away. My grandmother passed away in her 50s of ovarian cancer. So she didn't really have anyone else. And I am mad at him in some ways because when you marry someone, I don't know if he forgot the words, but it's, sick or not, rich or poor, whatever, you're going to stick by this person. And I'm sure somewhere along the line in their adventure, she was introduced to drugs. And then when you're just stuck at home with a baby and you have no job and you're waiting 9 months for your husband to come home, obviously she's going to revert back to the old behaviors because she didn't know any other way, right? And that just continued through her whole adult years, which then I brought her back out here and, she still ran amok all over town. And then I finally just said, this is it. You're going to either go to a homeless shelter or you're going to go to rehab. Guess what she chose? The homeless shelter. And we're going through her purse and she's pulling out Sudafed and Actifed and all these other, I'm like, really, Mom? You're going into, they're going to go through your purse. They're going to drug test you. All this stuff's going to happen. But it was the best thing I ever did because she got clean. And so the last 15 years of her life, she had clarity.
What a blessing.
Yeah. And I got her into mental health, which was not talked about when we were children and still has a long way to go. I just saw that kid that got shot that has autism. That breaks my heart. Recently in the news, we've got a long way to go with mental health.
We do. It is the next big crisis, especially after what we went through with COVID.
Yeah, I really do. I think that they talk about giving more funding or more help. I mean, there needs to be, fundraisers, and musicians need to get behind it, and celebrities, because it touches, whether you know it or not, touches a lot of people, because there's a lot of people that are undiagnosed. They just think, oh, they have anger management issues, whatever. But there's an underlying cause to those issues. So I think that's important.
A few personal notes about Alex that I know. Alex is a good friend, but also someone who always, in a professional setting, always operated at the highest possible level. And if I ever walked into an operating room, and we've been in a number of different surgery centers, if Alex was there, I knew that it was going to be a great day and the patient was going to do well. You've always been very honest, always went out of your way to help everyone around you. And I think part of that has to do with, perhaps your upbringing as well, because you weren't taken care of. You had a father who was away and a mother whom you ended up looking after and raising in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
The life that you've created in and of itself is equally worthy of cherishing and applause in comparison, obviously, with your dad. And so you've accomplished a lot. And I tell everyone, and I was telling my wife, and she's met you obviously, and we always say, Alex, that's such a great voice. So I'll be remiss in not asking you to do some singing for us.
Well, I just came up with this. It's only 3 chords, and it's in the works, but
that's okay. I don't even know what a chord is, so that's perfect.
People will, because I've. But let me see. Bring this little sucker over here. So I just, because I have all this music running through my head, and I figured that my husband bought me the guitar and said, you better
You better put it out there.
You better just do it, because no one's going to do it for you. And it's hard to get someone who's reliable in the music business, right?
Sure.
So I just decided to start taking lessons from this guy, David, and he's great with me, and he doesn't smack my hands and tell me to do it again, as you would think music school's like. But so I'll just give you a little bit of a song, if I can fit it in here.
Thank you.
Of what I've been doing, and it's just three chords. But let me see if I can get this behind here. Hold on. Okay.
In the meantime, I'll look up what a chord is.
Yeah, look at it. All right. So my husband doesn't dance. Okay. He's like Mr. Constructor, carries his nail bags, and we never had a real wedding. We both never went to prom. And so I just think dancing is such a freeing part of life. Like, I couldn't imagine life without dancing, only because I grew up dancing. And then everywhere I went, I was always just like, let's get it. Like, how can you sit in your seat and listen to this music? Like, I don't think rock shows are for you to sit there and just stare. I think you should get out and be dancing. But anyway, so just a little bit of it, because it's in the works, but it sounds weird with my headphones on. Dance with me underneath the stars, next to driving cars. Don't care where we are, as long as you take the chance and dance. Underneath the stars, next to driving cars. Don't care where we are, as long as you take my hand and dance. So that's just the beginning. It'll be released
That was beautiful.
Soon, but anyway.
That was great, Alex.
That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning of my cultivating. It'll be
a lot better. Can't wait to listen to the whole thing. And so of course,
I take something like that to my guitar teacher, and then I give him the green light to fluff it up. Like, now you have the basis, you know what the bass chords are, right? The melody, right? And he's already fluffed it up. We have the bridge, which is after that, for those two first verses. And then this week, I think we'll probably finish it up. And there's a recording studio up here in Joshua Tree that I think I'll be getting in touch with, and maybe release some music in the future.
So, of course, as you know, I'll ask the questions around here. What is the name of your debut album going to be? Because that's going to compel you now to create that album, right?
Well, someone actually already mentioned a name, and it kind of stuck, but Unburdened sounds like really good.
Love it. And it's kind of like a play on your last name.
Yeah.
And wow. That's great. Love it.
Yeah. I think that might be what it needs to be. But, and then everyone's always like, what are you going to use as your name? And my real first name was Mirage. They changed it when I was like, I don't know, a few months old. And that was a project my dad was working on, where a lady gave birth to the Earth out in orbit. She's just flying through the sky as a woman, nude, and she's got the Earth in her belly, and she gives birth to it. And it was a comic book called Mirage that he had done all the artwork on and stuff. And the album was released. It didn't do very well, but that's the only album I don't have out of my collection of his stuff. So I'm in search of it.
All right. I'll I'll start looking as
Yeah.
well. Alex, you've been a phenomenal guest and very open, quite vulnerable. I really appreciate you and the time that you've given us.
I think it's important.
And is there anything else you'd like to add? I mean, you've painted such a beautiful tapestry of your life.
No, I just, if anyone is out there going through addiction issues or, mental illness, has a kid that they don't want to get diagnosed, or you have a spouse that doesn't believe in that. I mean, I think if anyone was going to give me advice, the younger me having kids, I think it's really important to get early diagnosis. I think that you live in the past a little bit, but you have to move on to grow. And you're not who your parents are. You can make your own way and find out who you are in your own way, right? So that's, if I was to talk to someone or be able to get a, blowhorn and tell the world, because I have children that have some mental illness issues. Some of my other family members have mental health issues. And I just think it goes undiagnosed at an early age. And then you're not going to get a kid that's really responsive. So I think that's one big issue that's near and dear to my heart. And other than that, I look forward to writing some music and getting it out there.
And I am too, as well.
Thank you.
Alex, thank you again for your friendship. I'm deeply grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing.
I feel like I know you so much more now. I mean, and I've known you, more than 20 years, I think.
Yeah. But you just haven't, you haven't asked the right questions.
Wait a minute.
You did today.
I'll ask the questions around here, as you know. So, well, thank you again.
You didn't tell me that
Alex.
before we started. But I have to turn it around on you sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
All right. You have a great day. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of another episode of All Ask the Questions Around Here. I'm Dr. Elisha, and I hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on and perhaps something to smile about. If you enjoy what you heard, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join us next week for another journey through life's complexities and comforts.